お前の連れか？
ああ、仲良くしてやってくれよ。
仕方ねえな。遊んでやる。
GhostWire Tokyo. Back in 2019 at Bethesda's E3 conference, Tango Gameworks Shinji Mikami took the stage with Ikumi Nakamura to announce that the Japanese developer was working on a new title called GhostWire Tokyo. During that reveal, it was noted that the game would be arriving exclusively on PS5 consoles, and that it would be coming in 2021. Obviously, the title was hit by a delay and pushed to 2022, and now that we're a month into the new year, Bethesda and Tango Gameworks are gearing up to launch this anticipated project. To prepare for that day, which will be March 25th, I've had a chance to check out some gameplay as part of a hands-off preview session, where the storyline, combat, and the supernatural version of Japan is shown off in greater detail. First of all, let me touch on what exactly GhostWire Tokyo is. This is an action-adventure game where you play as a young Japanese man called Akito, who has become fused with the spirit of a versed and skilled ghost hunter called KK. As this combined duo, the point of the game is to explore Tango's supernatural version of Tokyo, to discover and learn its secrets, and to figure out why exactly a mysterious fog has consumed and turned the residents of a portion of the city into spirits. As you would expect, it's not exactly that simple, as at the core of the story is a powerful mastermind named Hanya, whose goal is to seemingly merge the real world with the spirit world, meaning you'll have to work to thwart his plans, whilst also saving civilians, locating and rescuing Akito's family, and dealing with all kinds of supernatural visitors that have crossed into the world. It's a sort of Ghostbustery storyline, except instead of being framed around a bunch of famous physicists using their advanced scientific gear to wrangle and suck up ghouls and spooky beings, in GhostWire Tokyo, Akito uses a magical, spell-casting technique known as ethereal weaving to tussle with the odd entities, who are invisible to regular people, that are threatening the city. This is a physical sort of magic, where Akito waves his hands in strange patterns to cast all manners of spells and abilities capable of damaging and making the enemy spirits vulnerable to a final strike, where Akito pulls their core from their bodies to banish them back to their realm. For the most part, ethereal weaving sort of looks like a combination of the fluid bending techniques in the Avatar anime, crossed with the finger gun actions of Kumail Nanjiani's Kingo from Eternals. And aside from attacking, you can of course cast a variety of different moves to do a range of other things, such as a shield-type ability to protect and deflect oncoming hits, and also abuse stealthy elements to attack from behind to instantly eliminate threats in a swift, almost instantaneous, execution-style action. Akito's ethereal weaving abilities give him a way to fight back. Flashing his hands from motion to motion, we see Akito gather energy from fire, wind, water, wielding the titular wires that lash out at foes, as his hands fly around the screen like he's Doctor Strange. Moving from one attack to another certainly looks smooth at this stage in development. I can't wait to get my hands on these hands and feel it for myself. Upon clearing the gate, Akito stumbles upon one of the few remaining humans in the city being captured by the fog. Fighting back, you're able to save their spirit, but they're no longer human. Don't worry, that doesn't have to be permanent. Apparently, this is a version of Tokyo where phone booths are still all over the place, each equipped with a spirit tool that allows you to turn people back to humans, safely outside the confines of the city where you don't have to actually talk to them. With over 240,000 spirits available to save, this doesn't look like it's going to be a short journey. I imagine you'll be spending more time running to phone booths than any of us have in the last 15 years. At some point, developers are going to have to find a replacement for such phone booths, before the average player is too young to even know what they are. Still, I get why they haven't thus far. It's hard to find something quite this ubiquitous in most cities. KK's apartment looks awfully high-tech, but the main thing the player gains from it beyond their next destination is a killer-looking bow and arrow, which can impact spirits. Throughout the time we watched the developers play, they never seemed to have a ton of arrows, but more were frequently available, and this looks to be a great way to fight from a distance. It's a good thing you have this new tool, because when you leave, you'll find the building surrounded by an energy barrier set to crush everything inside it in 7 minutes. Certainly nice of our foes to wait until you had a tool needed to survive this to unleash it. It's more complicated than that though, as you work to build up synergy with KK, have to counter incoming attacks with good timing, and can whip out a bow and arrow for a different style of ranged attack. That bow also comes in handy for exploring, letting you grapple up to the rooftops wherever the Tengu bird yokai are hanging out. Meanwhile, with no humans left to run shops, the cat yokai Nekomata has moved in to hang out, floating above the counter and happily selling you its wares. Beyond battling specters, there's a richness to the open world that I'm keen to explore. One of the things that you'll be tasked with while playing is retrieving the spirits of all the people who have been vanished, absorbing them into Katashiro paper dolls and then bringing them to phone booths kitted out with some kind of spirit transference device. There are 240,300 spirits to find, so this is sure to keep you occupied for a good long time. Some spirits don't want to go, though, bound to the earth and unable to move on until their business is finished. One old woman refuses to move on because her yokai, Zashiki Warashi, is being held hostage by her evil landlord. You have to venture into her former home, find where the landlord's spirit is hiding and rescue her yokai so that the old woman can pass on. That's just one example, and I really hope that there are more tender and touching stories being told through these side missions, which would make for a nice relief from the horror-infused action elsewhere given their previous games. It's no surprise to see Tango Gameworks leaning on some of the tricks of the horror genre trade within GhostWire, Tokyo. Parts of the world can shift and transform as you explore them, doing so in dramatic fashion. As Akito and KK are trapped in a block of flats, for example, they'll need to find and smash the barrier stone in time before the building is crushed with them inside. Searching through the different apartments, blobs of interfering gloop run across the walls, transforming the environments in the blink of an eye. It could be pictures of eyes gathering on the wall, graffiti spreading across it, a corridor almost disappearing so that it looks like you're walking through the sky above Tokyo, and the classic of jumbling up a room so that furniture is on a wall instead of the floor. There can be a toilet on the wall, and you can interact with it to close the lid. Perfect. It's also unclear just how much of Tokyo is modeled in the game, but what I saw looks great. Although some of the textures were a little simple and lacking in detail, the game's lighting and supernatural effects are very striking and effective. There are lots of authentic touches in the environments, which were mostly seen at night. There is also a surreal and otherworldly spirit realm in which Akito encounters the Hanya. I was particularly struck by the game's music. It often uses ancient Japanese music called gagaku, mixed with more contemporary electronics. It strongly suggests an unearthly mix of reality, and the supernatural combat looks like a lot of fun, with many options and approaches to enemies as Akito grows stronger and more experienced. Although GhostWire Tokyo is a unique game, I felt at least some echoes of games like Prey, Deathloop and the BioShock series in the way spells and powers were used. Since those are among my favorite action games, I'm not complaining. Going into the gameplay preview armed with little more background than the trailer, I was excited by what I saw. GhostWire Tokyo is a surreal blend of Japanese mythology, the supernatural and first-person combat. Though it borrows elements from other games, its blend of karate and magic is pretty singular. I'm anxious to learn more, and even more anxious to get my hands on the game when it releases later this year.